Hello my fellow admins and welcome back to another episode of Jira Guides. Void.admin here, and today in this video I'm going to show you how you can integrate Jira with AWS. So let's get into the video. So before going into today's video, I just want to mention all the prerequisites for this video. So in order for you to have a Jira AWS integration, that's a no-brainer that you need to have an AWS account, right? But I don't know when you're watching this video, but basically starting with 16th of July 2025, Amazon released a new free tier plan for new customers that are creating a new AWS account, right? So you can now create an AWS account and you don't need to pay any money for a span of 6 months. And on top of that, you also receive a $200, up to $200 of credits in your AWS account that you can spend. I don't know, you want to create a new EC2 instance, and then you will get charged from that credit that you already have in your account, right? But they will not charge you until you finish this credit that you have in your account, or you can actually, I don't know, surpass the 6 months of time, right? Which is great news because you can actually create a new account. So for that, I have a different video on my YouTube channel that you can watch and see exactly how you can create this AWS account. But besides this AWS account, you will also need to have GSM installed on your Jira, right? So for example, in the Atlassian documentation, they stated that you can have this integration also with Jira Core or Jira software, but that's not true because you cannot actually install the AWS integration app on your Jira if you don't have GSM, right? So for example, in Jira, you just need to go into the application and just make sure that you have Jira Service Management installed here, right? So if you don't have that and you want to install it and you don't know how, I also have another video on my channel on how you can install this. I actually will post everything down below into the description of this video, so it will be easier for you to access this information. So besides having Jira Service Management installed, you also need to have an app installed, which is called AWS Integration, which is something that is supported, like this app is supported by Atlassian directly, right? So you can install this by going here and just type AWS integration, you searched it, and voila, the second result here, which is called asset AWS integration. Make sure you're installing this and no other plugin here, because this is the one supported by Atlassian, and this is the one that we are going to make sure that we have this AWS integration in Jira, with Jira, right? So you just have here an install button. I already have it installed on my Jira, so I don't need to install it again. But in order for you to install it, just press that install button. It looks the same as it looks on this top menu here. But if you don't want to install it in this way, because in that option with find new apps and just clicking on that install button, it will actually install the latest version found on Atlassian Marketplace. But if you don't want to do that and you just want a previous version, you can upload manually the app in the Manage Apps section. So for example, in the Marketplace listing, if you are taking a look, I don't know, in the versions, if you don't want this 3.0.1 or whatever else version you can see here in the future, you just simply go with this 2.2.20 here. You just download the installer. There is a jar file here, and after that you can upload this. You can use this manual upload section here. Just choose the file and then upload, and in this way you are installing it manually on your Jira, basically on whatever version you want. So after you installed this AWS integration app on your Jira, we have this step, which is important, is this documentation section, right? So I'm not creating this video out of the blue, right? I followed this documentation in the past, but I just want to mention that this documentation is not slightly 100% correct. And some steps are like not so, I don't know how to put this, they're not so intuitive if you don't have like an AWS experience, like a background experience with AWS, right? So for example, this section here is incorrect 100% because I've tried it and it doesn't work. If you try to install this asset AWS integration add-on on your Jira and you don't have GSM, it will error at some point, and in the logs you will see that it's missing some dependencies, right? So you need to have GSM installed, as I said, because this will also give you this feature of assets in your Jira. You don't have asset in your Jira if you don't have GSM installed on your Jira, right? So make sure you have this, install the plugin from the latest version or whatever version you want from the Atlassian Marketplace, and then you're set to go with these new steps here. So as I said, this is not super intuitive for users because, for example, here you have a create an IAM user for importing. You need to create this user, but it's not the correct step because first you need to create this import policy. And after that, when you're creating this new IAM user, you need to attach that created import policy for this user, right? So they've said exactly here, create a policy and select this JSON, right? So what you need to do here now is simply click on this, and this will download for you this asset import policy permission, because you need to open this file, right? I'll choose Notepad. And in this Notepad, for example, you have like a JSON body that you need to, for example, paste in your AWS account if you want to, for example, use and actually make use of this AWS integration, because without this, it will not work. So what you need to do is just simply select everything here from this Notepad here, just copy, and then you're going to your AWS account here. And in your AWS account, you need to go into the user section, which is found in IAM section. I have it here as recently visited, but if you didn't visit it from the beginning, then you need to search it in this search bar. And here you just type IAM, go into IAM section. And in this section of your AWS account, you can see that I already have some users and one policy here. But I will go step by step so you can see exactly how this is working. So after you got into this IAM dashboard, on the left side where you have access management here, you have users. So you just click on users, and now you will not have any users here if you didn't actually create new users. But for this step, we don't need to create this user without having a policy. So what you are going to do is to go here into the policies, which is down below of roles. Just click policies, and here you will have some default policies that AWS is providing to you. But we need the specific one provided by Atlassian in order for you to have this AWS integration. So now, after you made sure that you copied that content from that JSON body from the permission file from Atlassian documentation, you just go here into policies, click on this button, create policy, and now you have this policy editor. So you just need to make sure that you click on this JSON, and then it will give you this JSON, I don't know, like example here. You just deselect, select everything, delete everything, and then paste the policy content that you have from this, how it's called, from that JSON file from the Atlassian documentation. And after that, you just simply click next. And here you just give like a policy name. I'll just go AWS imports YouTube and just put demo here, right? You can also put a description, that's optional. And what you are going to do here, you just see here all the allow permissions that it has from that JSON file that you have copied from this AWS import policy permission. What you need to do is just simply click on this button here on the bottom top right, create policy, and then you'll see that the policy AWS imports YouTube demo has been created. And here in the policy section, you also have this search bar. And I don't know, if I type demo, you can see that I have this policy name that I've created for this specific AWS integration with Jira. So now, based on this documentation, this was the second step, but it's actually the first step because you need to have this this one already created. And now the next step for you is to create the user for this integration. You just simply click users here on the left side of this menu. And now you just simply press this create user button. And now again, we need to give it this user a name, and the name for this, I'll just say Jira AWS import. So I know for what I'm using this user in AWS. I know that it's for Jira AWS import. So it's optional to give a management console access, but there's no point in that because this will work without giving this user access to AWS management console. So then we have the next step, which we simply just click next here. And now we have these 3 sections. And this is important because you are not attaching this user to a group. You are not copying some permissions. You need to attach a policy directly for this specific user. And now the policy that we have created previously, we needed to attach to this user. So we just simply type here demo because this is the policy that we created previously. Based on the Atlassian documentation, we just simply click on this checkbox here. We select that we want this permission policy to be attached to this new user, and then we just click next. And now we have the username. We have a bunch of information here, permission policy. We have the name of the policy that we have attached to this user, and you can actually create a tag if you want, but it's not actually required. And just simply click on the button create user, and now voila, you have this Jira AWS imports, which is like an empty user, but it has the policy attached to it, based as Atlassian says to us that how we can go with this AWS integration for you basically to have a user that will be used all the time where you are importing AWS data into Jira. For example, if you want to import EC2 instances in your Jira, you just follow this step as Atlassian says, and you'll just be good to go. But this is not, this is an optional step for this AWS integration to work, right? So basically that was actually it on the AWS side of things, but still, here that's why I said in the beginning that this is not so intuitive, the Atlassian documentation, because we need to complete these steps to obtain the IAM key, secret, and other details needed for asset configuration, right? And in the import AWS data into assets, it specifies for you like that you need an access key and a secret key, and it will give you like how you can set up these assets, but this is basically going backwards. And then when you scroll this, you just scroll, you actually don't have the steps on how you can generate this secret key. So I don't know what Atlassian did here. Like for example, oh, we need to import AWS data into assets Jira, and they are saying that you need an access key and secret key, but they don't actually provide you the step, which is like, I don't know, like it's not really intuitive if you don't know what you're actually doing and you're just like a beginner, or maybe you don't have actually AWS experience here to follow up these steps, right? So I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do after you created the user and attach that policy to the user. You just go into this user and just click on it after you created it. And here, what is like, how you are fetching this access key and security key to use it in your AWS imports, you just simply go into the security credentials tab here. You just click on it, and you will have here like more steps. You can create, I don't know, like console signing, multi-factor authentication, but this is not what we need. We need this access key, right? So for you to be able to fetch AWS objects like AWS data into Jira objects in assets, you need to have this access key, because this is how you are setting up a configuration in Jira. So what we need to do here is to create this access key inside this user that we have already created. So for example, you have this button, create access key. You just simply press on it. And now I just choose other, because the case is not listed here. I don't have these cases here. I just simply go with other, because we don't need to provide exact motive, like why we need this use case and for what we need this access key. And after you click other, you just simply click next. And now you just give like a description tag, like set description tag, which is optional. We don't need this for this access key, but it's okay to have it. I don't know, like you just simply say here AWS imports for Jira, and this is the tag, and just create access key, and access key, you can see it here. I will just show it here so you can actually see how these are looking, but after I release this video, I will just actually delete this access key and secret key so no one has access to my account, by the way. So for example, after you created this access key, think of this access key as tokens that you are creating in Jira when you want to access, I don't know, via an API. And if you create a token for your profile, you just know, but that after you created that token, you need to copy that token somewhere, because if you close that, you cannot retrieve it. And this is the same thing for the access key. If you lose or forget your access key, you cannot retrieve it. Instead, you need to create a new one and just make this old key inactive, or you just delete it, right? So for example, this is our access key and secret key. I will just not, for example, I will just, maybe it's better for you to download it via CSV and not do this integration in the meantime, because you need to complete these steps for the access key, right? So you just simply click download CSV file here, and you have this secret key and the access key inside that CSV file, and you don't need to think that you forget this, and just simply click done after this, and you can see that the access key has been created for this specific account that we are going to use it for this AWS and Jira integration. And now, as we have this secret key, that's basically everything that you want to do on AWS in order to achieve this AWS integration completely. So for example, you just, for the next step, you need to go into Jira, and in Jira, you just need to go into assets. I will just create an object schema specifically for AWS, because I don't want to mess with my already created schema here, which is called void_db. I'll just create a new object schema, but you can actually use a schema that you already have created, but this is simpler. So I'll just create an empty object schema. I'll just name it AWS and just simply create. After I created this new schema, I will just enter in this new schema. This is basically empty. But a prerequisite before creating an AWS import, you need to actually create an empty object here, because if you have an empty object schema, there is no way you can build the structure of all AWS objects that you can fetch from AWS in your Jira configuration, in your AWS configuration import that we are going to set it up, right? So for example, the step here, if you want, if you have an empty object schema, just create an object. But even if you have objects in these, like in an existing schema, just create an empty object called AWS, right? And I think I don't have an AWS icon. Yeah, doesn't matter. I don't have an AWS icon, so I'll just choose like a cloud thing here. If I have, yeah, I have one cloud here, right? So just create an empty object called AWS, because this should be like the parent object where this AWS integration will create a structure of objects from where you are finding like basically AWS objects after you fetch information from your AWS account, right? So you just simply create an empty object here, and on this empty object we'll be building up this this structure. So the next step is to go into object schema here on the top right corner, just open a new tab, configure, and in this configuration window we just go into the import, and here we don't have any imports because this is like a newly created object schema and we need to create an import. But now, because you have this add-on, which is the AWS integration, you will have a new import configuration here, which is called AWS import. Because if you don't have that, you have database, CSV, LDAP, and so on, right? And you have this AWS import. So you just simply click on this, click next. Now I'll just give a name here, AWS import. And For the rest one, you just simply ignore, click next. And now we have the important step that we already did it, like in AWS, to have a secret key, access key, and we also have a region, by the way, because when you are creating a user and when you're creating a new account, it also gives you like a region, right? So for this user here, you can see in the top bar is EU North 1. So basically this is the region where this user is located and also where your account is located, right? Because you can have one account in one region. Let me find this region because I need to go back here, and here you can see it's Europe Stockholm. So Europe Stockholm has EU North 1. So you have all this information on EU North 1 because this is where my AWS account is located, right? So here in your create importing configuration, we need the access key, right? So you remember that at some point we have downloaded the access key and secret key when we created this in our user that we are going to use in this Jira integration. And because we have this CSV, we can use the CSV all the time when we want to just save this data so we can have it somewhere so we don't lose it, right? So you just take this access key, copy and paste it here, and then you just simply go into the secret key, copy everything from here. And by the way, just to remember that this is the secret key that we have created for our user that we are going to use for this Jira AWS import, right? So in the security credentials, you can see it. This is the one, right, that we have created, and we will attach it here. So in the regions, as I said, this is the Stockholm one and EU North 1. So you need to select the region where your account is located. And now this is a more important step here. Like for example, in AWS, you can have AWS organization, where under that organization, you can create multiple accounts. So you can actually have multiple ARN here because those are specifically for a specific account, right? So, but in our case, we only have an AWS account. So you just need to put here only one ARN. And from where you are getting this ARN is simply from here. So you are just going into the user that you have created for this AWS import integration, and you just click on it. And now here you have this ARN in this summary widget here. You just simply have this button, copy, and then you're copying this role ARN here. I also like to put a comma here because sometimes I'm adding like new accounts here, and you just simply have a comma. It doesn't matter. It's working also without a comma and also with a comma. So you have this ARN here from basically from where you'll be fetching information from AWS in your Jira account, in your Jira environment, right? Basically in assets. So now the next step for us is just simply test the configuration to see if it's working. So you simply click on this test configuration, simply wait a bit so you can see that configuration is tested. We have a green check mark, which is good. And now we just simply click next. And now it will actually configuration test again. But now this is important that you need an account added here in this synchronization account, because this is like an account that will be used when it will create these new objects from AWS, when it will update objects from AWS in your assets. So I don't use like a real user here, because that real user can leave your company, or I don't know, and then you don't have this user anymore active. You just simply use an automation user, like a user that you know that you have created specifically for AWS, and this user needs to have like all type of permission, Jira administration, Jira system permission, because it needs to have permission to AWS in order to create objects and to edit and update objects, right? So after you selected the synchronization account here, you can actually automatically synchronize based on a cron expression. Let's say that you want to synchronize this every day at 12 o'clock. You can do this, but for this step, we don't care about this. We just simply click on Save Import Configuration. And now this is super important. Like don't skip this step in the video because you will not have a structure in your asset here. So for example, you remember that we have created this AWS empty object because under this object, we'll be creating a predefined structure which is built in this with this add-on which is called AWS integration from Atlassian. So the first step here is to create a predefined structure. So here you just need to select the object type that we have created in our object schema, which is AWS. We need to have an object type because this is the parent. And then the next step is to click on this button, create predefined structure. And what this does, it will basically create a bunch of objects here which are predefined by this integration from AWS. So we will have here AWS accounts, but these are called color identities. We have EC2 instance, database, etc. Right? So after you selected AWS, you just click predefined structure to create it, and then you will need to wait a bit because this step will create all those objects for you. And now basically you have the check mark that this predefined structure has been created. And now if you simply go back into another tab, not in this tab, and just simply refresh it, you can see that we have everything here already created, but we need to complete all the steps here. So we have the object type, and now we need to create a predefined configuration. And what this does, it will basically in this AWS import, it will create like a template for each object mapping. So you will have an object mapping for an AWS account, for an EC2 instance, right? So you will have all the mapping there with each identifier. So you don't need to create it manually because that's impossible. Like you have dozens of mappings here. So you just click on create predefined configuration, and this will basically take the structure that we have created under AWS and it will create this predefined configuration that we have. So now you can see that we have also the check mark for the predefined configuration. Take in mind that for this step, you might need to wait a bit because it's harder for this step to create all the import mapping for each object. And in this step, you just simply click close. And if you click on this AWS import, voila, you have it here already. Like you have all the mappings, as you can see. The color identity, this is a poor choice from Atlassian not to change this into AWS account because this is basically the AWS account. And you have region, you have tags, you have everything, right? You even have the users that you have created. So for example, you can also import users, right? So this user is the user that you have in your AWS account. So now after you have everything here, if we go back here and just refresh the page, you can see everything that has been created, including like with icons and everything, because this is like a predefined structure that will create for you. And this is super important because I've seen this error in the past with people that are doing changes into this predefined structure, and after that, you're just completely screwed. Why I'm saying that? Because, for example, let's say you can rename this color identity, or you can create one in this under general called AWS accounts, right? But keep in mind, if you do this, it will not, when you're creating a new import, a new AWS import here, and you create that structure, you will not have that as an object mapping here. So you need to create one from a predefined structure that you already have, right? So this is mind-blowing because this is specifically working in a structure that you have created from the start. So if you created this structure now, just don't do any modifications to it, because you can, let's say that you can do a modification here for the color identity and region, and after that you only need to create these two, color identity and region, based on what you have here. But if you are doing changes and moving objects around, like you're just moving workspace properties under security group or something like that, this will mess up the entire thing. And then when you are creating a new AWS configuration here, it will not have the same mapping as you have here because it cannot identify the same objects. So this is super important. Don't do any changes here because later on, like after 2 years, you don't know exactly what you can do when you just create a new AWS import and you just need to do manually everything. And let me show you how this is looking for an EC2 instance. Look at this. Like you'll need to attach this mapping manually one by one. So this is like bonkers. Don't do that. Like don't change it, right? This is super important. We have a lot of important steps in this video, but this is what it is, right? So now as we have everything here, our next step is to make sure that we are importing something that we want, right? Because you can see here that for each object mapping, we have an enable section. So this, for example, the color identity is the actual account. We need the account imported here, so we just leave it. Regions, we also have a region, but we might not have this imported if you don't have a specific region attached to your account. And zone, like we don't care about this. So I'll actually disable what we don't need. So for this specific video, security groups, disable, because we don't need these. If we don't have it in our AWS account, there is no need for this import to search in your AWS account if you have it, right? Because then it will take longer for your import to run, right? So we don't have any instances, we don't have any CPU. So basically I'll just click, because this will be enabled by default. So you just scroll down a bit here. We don't need this, we don't need this. IAM profile, no. But actually we have users, so I'll just keep this enabled. We don't have any groups. We actually have roles, so I'll just keep this. We have policies, so I'll keep this, but the rest is just simply disabled because I didn't created anything like this in my AWS account. So I'll just keep disabling everything here. Disable, and just you can see scrolling down how many of these you have, right? So just enable what you actually need. Don't enable everything because this will be a mess and you need to wait hours for this import to run successfully. Maybe, I don't know, if you have like more regions and more AWS account, this will be like a nightmare, right? So what we need to do next is to enable this import. You just click on this cogwheel here and click enable, and now your configuration has been successfully enabled. And the final step is just simply synchronize this. So I'll just simply click synchronize. It will ask you, are you sure about this? Yes, don't worry, it's no sugar, all joke, and just simply synchronize this. We'll just be waiting a bit here and processing. And after that, you will have a log of what exactly it has been created in your asset as object. So you can see that we have an object on a created object of the type color identity. We don't have any regions fetched. We have 3 users fetched, 2 roles, and 5 policies, right? So this is what we have in our AWS account that we fetched based on the enable section of what we actually enabled in the object type mapping. So we're just closing this. And now if we go back and just and we just refresh, go under general, we can see that we have a color identity, which is our AWS account. So you can see that our AWS account is connected to a policy, a role, and a user, right? So now if we are search for the user one, just click here on the search bar and just scroll down. You can see under IAM, we have 3 users, and you can see that we have the users that are found here. If we go into users, we have Jira AWS imports, Jira imports that I have created in the past, and void.admin. And if we take a look here, we have all of these users here, which are attached to an AWS account, which is the color identity. It also has a policy attached. So you can see that it also shows us the policy that we have for our account that we have created. So we can see AWS imports demo. Can we find this? So for example, policy, and now we just type, I hate this search in assets, like this is not good at all, but it was bad in the past. So now you can see that we have all the policies that we have attached in our account, because these policies are attached to a specific user, right? So because what policies you see here, when you simply search, these are basically default policies that AWS is providing you that you can attach to a specific user. But if you didn't attach any of these policies, it will not appear in your AWS account because they are not attached to any user. So you can see that what we have created, AWS imports YouTube demo, this is attached to this user because this user is used for the Jira AWS import. So you can see it has this ARN here, so it has an ID, it has a name, it has attachable true because it's attached to an user. And you can see here the actor, which is the, when we created the import, we needed to attach a user there that will do everything here. We'll create objects and it will update objects, right? So what we actually had, so we also had two roles, as you know, AWS service for support, AWS service for trusted advisor. So basically these are attached to a policy, and at the, if we click on this policy should also be attached to a user, but it's actually not. I think it's something from AWS. I'm not really sure. I'm not like super into AWS to know everything here, but that's basically it. Like, this is how you simply have this Jira AWS integration, how you can fetch AWS information from your account or from multiple accounts into your Jira. And basically here you have it. You have a bunch of objects that you can actually fetch information. You can have traceability in Jira of what exactly you have in AWS. One more thing that I want to specify from my own experience, just try, I know that it sounds like stupid, but for example, let's take this caller identity, right? Not caller identity, let's take roles, right? Because this is what I've seen in the past as a problem, but I'll do this with each object type mapping. So by default, when you create a predefined configuration in a new AWS import, you will have for each mapping this threshold type synchronization and missing object removed. So if we go in this cogwheel and just click configure, we'll see that, for example, if it cannot find in AWS this role, it will basically remove it. If you have this remove here, it will basically remove it from your asset object. So that object will no longer exist, even if it exists in AWS. So I've seen cases of errors in this integration with AWS from Jira, where this actual role exists in AWS, but for whatever reason, this import didn't saw it. And because it didn't saw it, for whatever errors that it has in the background, it will actually remove it. And when you have an object, remove is actually means delete. Like, it has been deleted from your asset schema because it didn't find it in that import, even if it existed. So I've seen this type of error. So what I've done in the past, I'll actually, when I'm creating a new AWS import, I'm going here for each enabled object type mapping and just simply ignore here. So missing objects, ignore. Missing objects, outbound reference, ignore simply. Because from my experience, this cannot be trusted. Like, this is a good integration from Jira to AWS, but sometimes it has errors that could lead into like critical incidents. But because let's say that you might lose something here, that it's found in a Jira ticket, because you can also like have objects here in a Jira ticket based on asset custom fields. So that will get removed if that object is removed from the schema. So that's not good. We all know that all the database from assets is connected with Jira. So if you want to retrieve those objects, you need to basically retrieve the entire Jira. So there's no point in having this as remove. Like, just simply make sure that missing objects and missing objects outbound reference, it's ignore. And you might end up with roles that have been deleted from AWS, but they are still in Jira. You maybe need to, I don't know, do type of a search where you can have like, let's say you just attach a status, because you can make changes in these attributes. So just attach a status here, and if this is not actually found, it will put here not found as a status, right? So you need to find like workarounds here so you don't end up with deleted objects from your object schema because there are errors in the AWS import configuration. So that was pretty much it. I think I've covered everything for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. and like this video if you like it. Subscribe will also help with this, and don't forget that I have a Discord channel where you can ask questions. We have a small community there. I also have a GitHub repository where I post some scripts there from ScriptRunner, templates that are free of charge for you to use. And thank you so much for being here today with me. And if you find this helpful, stay in touch, subscribe, like this video, and until next time, peace.